This is your Weather Extreme video for Saturday, July the 5th. I'm meteorologist Brian Peters. Thanks for tuning in, and this is not your typical July kind of day. We're starting the day out with beautiful sunrises in spots like this one at Fultondale, and temperatures dipping back into the upper 50s, mid-50s at some locations. The Gulf Coast looking beautiful too, with a beautiful sunrise as we see a high pressure system located over about the mid-Atlantic states and the Ohio River Valley, helping to keep the weather great across the eastern half of the country. The tropical storm has moved off and into Nova Scotia, and it is now downgraded to a tropical storm. So the overall weather pattern appears to be more of a ridge in the west and a bit of a trough in the east, and it looks like that kind of pattern in the upper atmosphere stays that way for much of the week ahead. Temperatures certainly not your typical July, with dew points way down. Dew points generally in the 50s across north and central Alabama. They're still in the lower 60s along the Gulf Coast, but that certainly makes for some drier air, and the cooler air feels wonderful. A little brisk start to the day. Focus on QPF, and rainfall for the next several days, for the next 5 days, is going to be along frontal system moving to our north. That it will be approaching our area, but it probably won't be enough to actually come through like the last front did. Storm Prediction Center outlooking a slight risk of severe across parts of northern Minnesota and the eastern half of North Dakota for day 1. That's today. And then for Sunday, day 2, that slight risk area moves over into southern Wisconsin, Illinois, and parts of Iowa. And as I say, Arthur has been downgraded to a tropical storm and losing its tropical characteristics as it moves into Nova Scotia. And otherwise, things are relatively quiet across the tropics. All right, let's take a look at GFS modeling this morning. And there's the surface high pressure pattern, keeping things pretty nice across the eastern half of the country for this July 5th and for the start of the middle of the July 4th weekend. The upper air pattern for Sunday shows the general troughiness over the eastern half of the country and the ridge building across the western U.S., and that pretty much allows moisture to return a little bit across the southeastern U.S. I think pretty much for Sunday and Monday and probably into Tuesday, the moisture stays pretty much along the Gulf Coast and the southeast coast of the U.S. and over Florida, so we should stay pretty dry. That the overall upper air pattern on Monday stays with a nice trough moving across southern Canada, and that trough moves over into the Great Lakes area on Tuesday, and that is helping to deepen the trough over the eastern half of the country, and so that brings the cold front down into the middle Mississippi River Valley on Tuesday. That trough does deepen a little bit on Wednesday, and that looks like that's probably about as deep as it gets. And so that brings the cold front down into the Ohio River Valley, perhaps even as close as the Tennessee River Valley, but it's kind of between the two, actually, on Wednesday. So with moisture levels coming up, it looks like probably Wednesday will be our first day with some shower chances driven primarily by the heat of the afternoon. The trough is still there on Thursday, but it's weakening a little bit as the main energy with that stays well up in Canada. And so the westerlies stay well to our north, and that allows the ridge to build a little stronger as we get into Friday. And then a week from today, on Saturday, we see the ridge a bit stronger still yet, and that means a little bit more warmth for the eastern half of the country. And also, with moisture levels up, it just means that we're going to see those daily chances for showers. So we're getting back into something a little more akin to the weather pattern that you normally see in the early and middle part of July. Looking out into Voodoo Country, the GFS a little more consistent in Voodoo Country today with the run yesterday, keeping the heat bubble, the big ridge over the western half of the country, and still the hint of a troughiness over the eastern half of the country around the 17th, so the middle of July. And when we get out to the very end of the period, it maintains that pattern and keeps it that way. And that's good for us because that keeps the heat off to the west and keeps us at least warm, but not into anything of any extreme values. and I can live with that for much of July. Well, that'll do it for the Weather Xtreme video. I expect to have the next one posted by 8 a.m. or so on Sunday morning. In the meantime, enjoy this one more day of beautiful, almost fallish, dry weather. I'm meteorologist Brian Peters. Godspeed.